Opening, Chapter 2, All the Drowned Folks, by Ken Clark and John Williams.
That evening, after Kane had done some catching up with an old Kentucky gentleman in her filthy Motel 6 room, deep in the dead of night, a tornado touched down in Pulan. It was a single-minded tornado that came straight down out of the sky and destroyed exactly one house. The house of Chief Banks. Kane, of course, slept through it. But so did everybody else in town, except for the two closest neighbors who reported that they'd heard a whirring sound, but nothing else unusual. Imagine everyone's surprise the next morning as they awoke to find the house in pulverized ruins. And the local TV station confirmed that a twister had descended from the sky at 3:39 a.m. There was no sign of Banks' personal patrol car, and half the people who had gathered around to gape at the wreckage hoped the chief had, and half hoped he hadn't, been at Simi Sue's trailer, even though officially his relationship with the whole dancer was unofficial. Around 10 o'clock, the Lincoln Continental of Reverend Glasscock of Pulan First Baptist pulled up, scattering the onlookers. The chauffeur got out and came around to open the rear door. Reverend Glasscock, his wavy white coif and gold accessories brilliant in the morning sun, emerged, took one look, and declared it the hand of God. Such a direct hit could be nothing other than divine retribution, he pronounced, like Jesus smiting the barren fig tree. Then he got back in his Lincoln and headed off for his weekly manicure, and the rubberneckers slunk away like mice. If it looked like Kane had slept in her clothes when she arrived at the scene, it was because she had. But she was on her third cup of Maxwell House by then and slowly pulling herself together. Nobody was left but a deputy who looked like he had been inflated with an air pump into his uniform and needed to go to the bathroom, and a 10-year-old boy who should have been in school. But why start now? Kane tried to get some information out of the deputy, but quickly realized that he was morbidly ungifted intellectually, so she tried the boy. "I know who done it," the boy said. "What do you mean who done it?" Kane said. "I thought it was a tornado." The boy shook his head. "I can show you." Just then, a city truck towing a backhoe arrived, and Kane waited around long enough to see them unearth the patrol car. "That's not good," she muttered to herself, and looked around for the boy, who was peeing on the side of the neighbor's garage. "You about ready?" she called over the roar of the backhoe. The boy zipped up and got in Kane's car, and they headed out Slipfinger Road. "What's your name?" Kane asked him as they drove. "Halbert Workman," the boy said, and Kane glanced at him. "But everybody calls me Gyp." The drive was familiar, too familiar, and before she knew it, Kane found herself back where she had been yesterday. Like following the déjà vu roaches. But this time the boy directed her down a just about impassable ancient logging road, and they parked under a giant red oak tree. Then a 10-minute walk through the congested woods to the remains of an old barn with some kind of complicated-looking antenna or something on the sagging roof. A big double door was open, and Gyp stealthily led Kane around to a hiding spot where they had a view into the moldy building. Kane would never forget what she saw. The back of a huge female figure sitting cross-legged on the floor, eating something a little too recognizable she shouldn't be eating, with some kind of murmuring sound in the air. "What makes you think she did it?" Kane whispered. Gyp just pointed to the apparatus on the roof.
"Let's get out of here," said Kane.
As they made their way back to the car, Kane was thinking, so it's true, they can control the weather with a space laser. What's next? They're killing whales with wind power. It looked like she was going to have to rethink who they were. She was working on that when her phone rang. It was the sheriff's office. Sure enough, they had unearthed Chief Banks' body, along with another body, a still unidentified female. A year before the recent tornado, July was walking in the nearby woods and was startled to run up on a pale blonde woman by the creek sitting cross-legged in a meditative state. July stopped and was considering backing away when the woman said, without turning her head, "Beautiful day, isn't it?" Her voice was like an angel pouring honey into your ears. "Yes, it is. Days like today help me feel like it's going to be okay. I go by the name July." She didn't respond or acknowledge his introduction. Awkward moments passed until she spoke again. I know you, July. I have always known you. I'm a Wiccan. Is that your family? July asked. No, it's a person who practices or believes in Wicca, a modern religion that is based on magic and pre-Christian European beliefs. She continued, Wiccans meet in sacred circles where rituals are held. Rituals usually include a combination of meditation, invocations, movement, music, and prayer. Wiccans honor the elements of nature, earth, air, fire, water, and spirit, and their associated directions of north, east, south, west, and center. July couldn't determine if she was crazy or sincere, but he felt comfortable with her, so pressed on, What? Smiling, Jill Carter elaborated, Wiccans believe in supernatural powers such as magic and in both male and female deities. They also believe in reincarnation and practice their religion according to an ethical code. What sort of magical abilities? Magical abilities such as chaos magic, flight reality, warping psionic abilities, telekinesis, telepathy, mental control, astral projection, precognition. Elemental manipulation including cryokinesis, photokinesis, and electrokinesis, and force field teleportation healing. Sorry, he asked. July tried to lighten it up. That's way over my head. I can't imagine that. Jill turned to July. You know this is true. You've known your whole life. You have abilities and have opened gateways to other realities or dimensions. The others and Glenda. How did she know about them? July thought. That was a secret that he learned to keep hidden. Abruptly, he blurted out, Well, I gotta go. July turned to leave and walked around 20 yards when he heard Jill's voice in his head, as clear as if she was standing next to him. I know you have secrets, July. I know you have dreams. I know you know that things aren't as they seem. Why are you telling me this? July thought, not knowing why he knew her name. The voice responded, Because the evil mother, a parasitic being from another dimension, is also a great enemy of Wiccan. You know her as Glenda. July knew Glenda was always with him and knew everything he experienced. He knew Jill was in trouble and he hoped she knew it. Oh God, he didn't want what had happened to the others happen to Jill. Oh God, no. Kane sat in the office, more or less a closet, the police department had provided for her, trying to make sense of everything. The absence of Chief Banks was palpable. When an oversized, snoring, farting, finger-smelling elephant in the room becomes suddenly absent, you don't just notice it, you feel it. Mayor Krebs had appointed his brother-in-law, basically a mildly retarded duplicate of Banks, as acting police chief, but fortunately so far he hadn't made an appearance in the office. He was planning to act remotely. Kane had no complaints about that situation. First order of business in any crisis: eliminate distractions. Then separate all the known facts from the probable, the suspected, the unlikely but possible, the highly unlikely and not possible, and spread everything out before you and look for patterns. Try to see the big picture. Look for motives. With her sixth sense, she was good at this. Her attention kept circling back to July, and she knew that sooner or later she was going to have to talk to him. No way in hell she was going in that trailer. She would just have to make a point of catching him outside it one day. But for now, she found herself wondering, how did Mama die? She made a mental note to call Archer soon. They needed to put their heads together. And who or what was this entity whose life July feared for? Her sixth sense was giving her two strong signals. That kid, or what was left of the kid he had been, was supernaturally intelligent. So what the hell was he doing there at the head of a long line of bodies of those who had tortured him? And the other was the overwhelming feeling of hunger that permeated that whole unstable area out there. Yes, that was the word. Unstable. You couldn't even say if any of it was real or not, or whether it was all something that hadn't happened yet, or had already happened. Maybe it was the dream or archaic memory of something nameless and corrupted to the point of rot. Maybe something like a black hole, sucking in everything around it. Or maybe by chance, just where they had landed. And who the hell were they? Were the thing in the woods and Glenda the same thing? Or was she only one of them? or both?
It was going to be a tough piece of police work sorting it all out.
And as she looked over the jumble on her desk, she suddenly felt dizzy, and for a few seconds saw graphs and vectors and equations radiating all around her work. She shook her head to clear it, and all the words she had written seemed to levitate a few inches into the air. And then, like flipping a switch, she was no longer seeing letters and words, but just the crosses and circles and diagonals of the symbols, like some incomprehensible ancient language. Just symbols, no meaning. Or bleeding universes. She lost herself there for a few minutes, and when she came to, the secretary, Myrtle, who had done the exact same job there for over 30 years, was standing in the doorway to the office with her arms crossed and her hair in a bun. "Have you tried the Calm Man?" she said. As Kane stared at her, her face dissolved into geometric shapes. Then she turned and went back to her desk. And Kane noticed for the first time the group's 30 years of unvarying footsteps had worn into the tile floor of the hall, like wheel ruts. The thought flashed through her mind. Maybe it's all a story about aliens visiting an alien place. And we're the aliens.
Well, she came from Vidalia, where bitter things are sweet. Went through things she can't tell ya, landed on her feet. High school was a joke, no hope for the hope. Big dream was the day she'll marry some local dope. There's something about her I can't explain. He always takes the low road, cries her heart out in vain. There's something about me I can't explain, but that my love always, it always comes from pain. She don't care about the brains or the things she eats, or that Jesus said. She just cares about me. There's something about her I can't explain. Always takes the low road, cries her heart out in vain. There's something about me I can't explain, that my love always, it always comes from pain. There's something about her I can't explain. She always takes the low road, cries her heart out in vain. How quickly summer's sun fades to winter's rain. When your love always, it always comes from pain.
With all her plates spinning in the air on sticks, Kane called her old friend Archer to check in on the calming reality of dead people who were really dead. She had to build this case on a firm foundation because she knew Big Tip Johnson would never accept a hippy-dippy case based on entities, spirits, and aliens. "Jello," answered Archer. "Archer, how's it hanging?" quipped Kane. "Low, loose, and full of juice," Archer responded without missing a beat. "Hey, I need a reality check here," Kane said. "I thought I was coming to a small town to quickly solve this case, but instead I've plunged into Bear Bryant on Acidville. I can't get my bearings. All I've got is a glue-sniffing witness who claims wizards have sicked entities on this community for past grievances. I can see me bringing that case to trial. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, if you will direct your attention to man in the plain robe and the conical wizard hat." Archer responded, "You and I both know you are the best detective in this state. You don't need my help." "Yeah, but that's on Earth." Archer pressed on darker, wanting to help his good friend. "I think it's just going to get weirder and weirder and weirder until finally it's going to be so weird that people are going to have to talk about how weird it is. I look for the invention of artificial life, the cloning of human beings, possible contact with extraterrestrials, possible human mortality, and at the same time appalling acts of brutality, genocide, race baiting, homophobia, and famine." Archer continued, "The mushroom once said to me, this is what it's like when a species prepares to depart for the stars. Depart for the stars under orderly conditions. This is what it's like when a species prepares to move on to the next dimension. What we have is a fire in the madhouse at the end of time." Not really knowing if her good friend had gone insane or just adapted to his environment, Kane told Archer goodbye and promised to get together soon for whiskey and rye. She felt alone, but she was strong enough for that. She had come from Vidalia, Georgia, where bitter things are sweet, and had gone through things she can't tell ya, but always landed on her feet. She knew she had to leave her hometown girlfriends, whose big dreams were the day shift, and to marry some local Peckerwood dope. She left for a life of doing good and helping people who really needed it, like she did as a child. She had pushed down plenty of pain in her life to that basement anger shelf, which she kept down with Brown. Kane would need all of her strength, resilience, and motivation to solve this case. Like everyone, she had plenty of flaws, but she knew them and how to use them. She was bookish and arrogant, pensive and uninhibited, kind and tactless, empathetic and selfish. She had used them in the past to conquer all sorts of demons, and she knew she was facing a boatload with this case. Kane also knew the road to hell was paved with bad intentions, which came very easily to some in this community. How quickly summer's sun fades to winter's rain when your love always comes from pain. Myrtle's directions, like Myrtle, were humorless and to the point. Kane couldn't help a bit of grudging admiration for the woman who had sliced life up into square pieces and stowed them in a storage shed. The woman who didn't allow any emotions to interfere with the tedium of life. Not expecting anything, she always got what she expected, and did exactly the same thing every day. It was her strategy, and it worked. It was a part of town you would never have noticed on a casual drive-through. Hiding in plain sight, as they say. A grimy area of rundown shacks and trailers set back from the main road where there weren't a lot of extra cats and dogs wandering around, just saying. And some funny fumes floating down the potholed streets and over the junky lots. The last street petered out into a suspicious-smelling creek and some exhausted woods. And it was there that Kane found the thick grove of bamboo Myrtle had told her to look for. As she parked and got out of her car, everyone standing around on the streets and in the yards doing nothing did even more nothing as they gaped at her with half-open mouths. No threat there, she told herself as she ducked into an opening into the jungle of feral bamboo. 20 feet in, the world out there faded like a guilty memory, and she marveled at the privacy of the place. And, except for a trickle of water and the melodic pulse of Bach, its quietness. The water, she discovered, came from a water wheel turning in the center of an ingenious garden, and the Bach through an open window in the small hut behind it. A man with long black hair tied off in a ponytail sat on a footstool in the garden with shears, snipping and humming along with Bach. "Hi," said Kane. "Sorry to startle you, but there was no reason to go any further." The man was perfectly unstartled. "Welcome," he said, snipping. "Are you the calm man?" "I've never been called anything better," the calm man said, "but plenty of things worse." "Is this all you do?" "No. I take walks and sit by the creek in my chair. I play the piano and read. And I write one haiku a week. A calm life." "Yes. And they tell me you answer questions." "Yes, I enjoy answering questions, especially the ones I can answer." "Do you know Elijah Abaddon and July?" "Not personally, but I know of them." "What is in the woods out there?" "Something cruel and something hungry." "Is July aware of it?" "Yes." "Is he in danger?" "His job is to be in danger." "Why is July the way he is?" "He's never forgotten how it felt to be abused when he was a child and powerless." "Is that where Glenda comes in?" "I don't speak that name." "Anywhere anyone speaks that name, she can hear it. And she never forgets." "What can you tell me about Jill Carter?" "There's a tornado with her name on it." "Are these creatures actual human beings or something else?" "That's not a very good question." "If you go out there," he gestured toward the world, "and pick 10 random people, 3 of them on average will be something else." Just because something looks like something doesn't mean it's the something it looks like. Some are aliens, some are time travelers, some are just flat out something else, and there's a reason they never go to doctors. "What about you?" "Don't ask." "Is it even possible to solve these murders?" "Solve them, yes. Change them, no."
In a dream late last night, they appeared, I don't know why. The secret of life is to die before you die, to know there is no death in this life. I was shown a photograph of a kid from my past. First I missed my call, then I missed my dream. Now I miss the boy that was me. Ghost, mystically, forever calling me, but my ears no longer hear their lonely haunting voice. Evolve or die was my only choice. Weakness disguised as strength from a pain underneath. There never was a time when the past set me free, nor will there ever be. From the ether, love gleams, a burst of light into a trillion beams, and made the Buddha blink and the Dalai Lama scream. What's the deal with all these crazy dreams? What's the deal with all these crazy dreams? What's the deal with all these crazy dreams? What's the deal with all these crazy dreams?
Is there anyone around here that is normal? She said with a flush of red, awkward embarrassment pouring over her face for asking such a stupid question. I'm extremely suspicious of normal people, the calm man said, not looking at her. I think they're devious for the most part because they're lying. The only way that you can be normal in a society like this is to be complicit with things that are inhuman. Joseph Conrad said in Heart of Darkness that the devil of our age is not satanic and diabolical. He's just this flabby, mediocre creep. Nothing special about him, and people are fools to fall for all his tricks, because they're not very good tricks. I mean, that's what we live in now. These morally indifferent and complacent, lazy-minded, passive hordes of people just waiting for who knows what. Feeling thoroughly spanked, Kane backed up and tried again. I apologize for asking such a stupid question. It's just that I feel like I'm losing my balance in this case. I'm not sure how to proceed or even what questions to ask a potential suspect. I've solved over 175 cases in my career with standard questions like, where were you when? Who benefited from this death? Who was cheating on who? Who had a motive and opportunity? But this one is not in the playbook, and I find myself hanging on the cliff with broken fingers. Turning to look directly at Detective Kane, the calm man held her eyes with his. If you realize that there are an infinite number of parallel realities, it means there are an infinite number of parallel versions of Earth. But they coexist simultaneously right now, so basically you never actually change the world you're on. You change yourself and you shift yourself incrementally to different versions of Earth that already exist that are more and more and more reflective of the change you make within you. People may still exist on the world you left behind, but you may never interact again because they may actually be on another vibrational level of Earth that exists simultaneous with the one you shifted to. And when you think of yourself as an indestructible, eternal, infinite being, nothing is ever really lost. When you go to talk to Elijah and July, just know that there are many curtains, shadows, and secrets in this life that hide all manner of beauty and horror. If you are not smart and strong, you will experience true horror. That night, Kane had a dream that she was drowning on a beach off the coast, and the lifeguard who came to help her was being pulled under by a strong current with no way to escape. Struggling to breathe while she was submerged in murky water, she saw Jill Carter at the foot of her bed. It didn't look like Jill, but somehow she knew it was her. She was translucent and staring directly at her. She spoke to Kane in a distant voice, which was not synchronized to the movement of her lips. The old man and the boy have secrets you must know. The reality we experience is an illusion. We are trapped in a cycle of life, death, and rebirth. The dissatisfying nature of chasing a desire and then either failing to fulfill it or fulfilling it temporarily only leads to more desire. We never arrive at satisfaction so long as we are trapped in the cycle. Kane's dream shifted to the ether where love gleams with a burst of light into a trillion beams that made the Buddha blink and the Dalai Lama scream. What's the deal with all these crazy dreams? Kane woke up spooked. She quickly looked around her room, wondering if her vivid dream was real. Not detecting any hints in the room, she lay back down thinking about what she had experienced that night. She knew intuitively it was real. This was going to be a very weird and dangerous experience which all hinged around the old man and the boy. Today would be the day. Today she would enter the swirling vortex and try to bring closure and justice for the victims and their families. It would take everything she had and then some. She hoped she would be up for the fight. As she lay on her bed, she looked out her bedroom window and saw a blackbird sitting on a wooden fence post. As she stared at the bird's dark grace, she thought, all your life you were only waiting for this moment to arise. The place had a quality, how would you phrase it, of being there and not being there at the same time, and gave you a sense of vertigo. Were you stepping into the territory of others, or were you the other? Had you come to look at the freaks, or were you the freak? Somewhere in your mind you had deep memories of both. Those echoes, so strong here, of all the selves crawling down the infinite staircase of your soul. Kane shook off the feeling and parked. It was one of those December afternoons just waiting to die. Spiritless and overcast, the trees like the naked scaffolds of a burial ground, the air like held breath, not a soul around. Her car door closed like an axe stroke, and the afternoon winced. The cabin stood still and silent, and Kane's eyes took it in as a doctor looking for disease would. It gave no sign at all of harboring life, yet didn't feel deserted. She stared at the windows, barely obscured by ragged strips of cloth that might once have been curtains. The truck sat parked under a rickety shed, looking like it hadn't even considered moving in a long time, though she knew it had. She looked away, felt a flash of movement, but when she jerked her head back, there was nothing there. At least, nothing visible. The trailer was the same story, but different. Something sentient, something vigilant radiated invisibly all around it and made a hum you didn't hear, but felt. Kane stared at it like the dark place where a snake suddenly disappeared. There was someone in there, all right. She glanced back at the house and now fancied she saw a profile in a window. Maybe not. Then she started for the door of the trailer, but her footsteps mired in the chewing gum of the air, and no matter how many steps she took, she got no closer. Breathing heavily with the exertion, she stopped and waited. Then a face appeared in the little window of the trailer door, and she recognized him, though she had never met him. The unreadable features decaying into adulthood, the wispy scraggle of whiskers, the stringy hair, the lost eyes, the unnatural intelligence. A face that would have looked hopeless if it had only known what hope was. Maybe he seemed familiar because he stood for every lost thing bearing the curse of consciousness. The keener the perception, the sharper the pain. Kane felt a pang of sympathy for him and tried to go to the door but couldn't get any closer. The eyes just watched her, and for a while nothing happened. Then the door slowly opened, and the thrown-away boy stepped outside and stopped on the top row of concrete blocks that were his steps. Kane beheld him in wonder, trying to read the inscrutable epic in his face. He looked back, seeing only a stocky woman with short black hair and khaki trousers and a black jacket. They stood there. Finally, Kane said, "Are you July?" His eyes stayed locked on hers. "I am." "Do you live alone?" Silence. Then, "I just live." She absorbed that, distracted, trying to find the thread of her inquiry. And as she looked back at the cabin, where the profile in the window maybe was a trifle more convincing than it had been, maybe a trifle less, she became aware of a disturbance in the air off the end of the trailer, like a shadow, but more than a shadow, a writhing of space-time itself. Something waiting, listening. Something restless. "I'm investigating the recent murders." "I know. Do you have any information that might help me bring some closure to the suffering and injustice of?" "I don't have any information." "Are you aware that you've been implicated?" "Nothing surprises me." It was not a statement of evasion, but of simple fact. Nothing surprised him. "What about your neighbor?" Kane nodded her head toward the silent cabin. The profile seemed to shudder, but Kane knew how deceitful imagination could be in this environment. "Is he here?" "His truck's here." "I see that." July made a little shrug. "He could be anywhere. Do you think he would be willing to talk to me?" July stared at her with his ocean-like eyes. "No. He wouldn't even be willing to let you see him." "Obviously. Have you heard about something unusual that lives in these woods out here?" She vaguely gestured to the swampy shadows that extended behind their clearing. The disturbance at the end of the trailer seemed to gather itself into a knot. "Ask him," July said with a curt nod to his left. Kane glanced across the trashy corridor between trailer and cabin. "Another day, maybe," said Kane, just as a sudden sound like the swoosh of wings shocked the dead afternoon, and her eye caught sight of what might have been a large fowl disappearing blackly into the woods with a muscular stroke and forlorn cry. The disturbance in the air went with it. "What do you do out here?" she asked July. "You think nothing." "I don't think nothing or anything. I'm only asking. Even nothing is something." "Okay. I've got some things to check on. I'll be back." Kane took her leave and drove back to town, wondering what her next move was. But she was pretty sure about one thing. She thought, and maybe her lips even moved. They're trying to pin it all on him. The next day, Kane called her friend and colleague in the state police office, Betsy Taylor, to ask a favor. Betsy, I've been wallering around down here trying to flush a covey, and I've come across some information which may or may not have a bearing on this case. I'm intrigued. What can I do? Asked Betsy. Kane asked Betsy to see if she could come up with any link between all of the victims in this case in any of her databases she was proficient at using. Look for relationships, organizations, clubs, anything that may link all of these victims. If there is none, then we've got the worst nightmare of a homicide detective, which is a random serial killer. Will do, boss. What have you found? Asked Betsy. I don't want to prejudice your inquiries, so I'd rather not say right now. Betsy promised to get right on it and get back to her tomorrow at the latest. Kane thought there must be some piece of evidence she was missing. This case had been like a dream where you know there is something there. But when you turn your mind's eye towards it, the dream dissolves and only the feeling remains. Kane felt this would be a case like none she'd ever had and would require both lobes of scientific and artistic thought to solve. She went back over and wrote down what she had so far. 8 people, 6 men and 2 women, have been murdered in a short amount of time. 2. The means of death, sometimes violent, sometimes without any visible cause, but always ending in dead. 3. A local glue sniffer claims a spirit identifies July and Elijah as wizards and Glenda as the murderer, whoever the hell she is. 4. I've interviewed 17 friends, family members, and potential witnesses. Every single one implicated July and / or Elijah. No physical evidence, just a feeling of dread and circumstantial evidence. 5. My short interview with July gave me a sense that July did not commit these murders, but that he is hiding something and knows who did. 6. I don't know shit from Shinola. I've got to go back out to the trailer and turn up the heat. As she was contemplating her tactics for the next interview, her phone rang. Hey Betsy, what you got for me? Some very interesting information. I've discovered that powerful civic leaders, including the district attorney as well as the mayor and even the governor, have lost millions of dollars in real estate investments due to a decision by the Obsidian Group not to develop on certain city lands. The group received numerous death threats as a result. And guess who's on the Obsidian Group? The 8 murder victims. Bingo, replied Betsy. Also, this group owns all sorts of property and commercial dwellings all over the state, such as office buildings, storefronts, foster homes, and... Wait a minute, did you say foster homes? Asked Kane. Yes, Mom. They had 4, but 2 were shut down because of abuse allegations which lasted for years. Finally, Kane had something to follow up on. Thank you very much, Betsy. You're welcome. Anytime, boss?
It was time to rip someone a new one, and she was just the woman to do it.
Kane drove down the muddy clay road to the half-consumed trailer on the right. She had a game plan to employ the confrontation technique she had learned at the academy and used many times. She was uneasy about it because she had no idea how July would react. She knocked on the door of the trailer and it opened slightly, and she pushed it the rest of the way open to see July standing in the corner of the room. July, I need to come in and ask you more questions about these murders, she said at a brisk pace. July just stared and didn't respond. We can do it here or downtown. Your choice, Kane said firmly. July motioned her in and braced for impact.
Kane unleashed a barrage. I'm losing this case, and you know why I'm losing this case. It's because you are lying to me.
No, said July. I'm the only one who believes you, she continued. There are powerful people who want you to pay for these murders. Did you murder those people? No. I don't believe you, Kane pressed. I got this ridiculous case and I don't believe you. I know what you did. I have witnesses. I want you to tell me the truth. Do not even think about telling me anything but the truth. Don't lie to me. You're so full of it. You killed them, didn't you? You killed them.
July turned away and faced the trailer wall. After a brief silence, he spoke in an eerie woman's voice. You tell her the truth and don't lie, you little jerk. What the hell you want from me now? Quit crying. I can't understand a word you're saying. You little sissy, you make me sick. Turning back towards Cain with a completely different, sinister demeanor, July continued, Who the are you? Who the are you? Was Cain's startled response. This is my home. Approaching Cain, July sneered, I got you now. You're that cop. You're that lady cop, aren't you? I heard about you. Well, my. You sure messed this up. Sounds like they are going to blame July and pump him so full of poison that it will be coming out his eyes.
Where's July? Asked Cain.
You scared him off. In Cain's face, July barked. You got to deal with me now. You ever come in here again, pulling that tough stuff, I will pull your heart out and stuff it down your throat. You understand me?
Yeah, I understand. I understand when July gets in trouble, he calls you. Cain backed out of the trailer and got in her car with her tail between her legs. She had just jumped in the pool and was blindsided by a tsunami. As Cain started her car, she turned on the lights. It had gotten dark in more ways than one. She had an eerie feeling as she headed back down the gravel road. Suddenly, out of the black night from the right side into her headlights, a huge black dog, or was it a wolf, ran in front of her and made her slam on the brakes. The creature was gone, and there was silence except for the idling of the engine. Without warning, the creature had jumped on the roof of the car with a creepy whine and growl. Cain pulled her weapon and hit the gas. She looked in the rearview mirror, and the wolf was following right behind her. She looked at the road, then back in the mirror, and there was an old hag grinning in the back seat. She slammed on the brakes and whipped around with her weapon cocked to see no one in the back seat. She took off and reached the main road. As she turned towards town, she heard a sinister cackle and experienced what felt like a hand reach inside her chest and squeeze her heart. She had experienced angina before, but this was different, a suffocating stopping of her beating heart. She was becoming lightheaded. Up ahead was a 7-Eleven. She headed for that as her consciousness faded. She veered wildly into a space in front of the store, slammed the brakes, and her head collapsed against the steering wheel. People coming out of the store with cigarettes, purple and green sodas, beer, lottery tickets didn't find the sight all that unusual, but unusual enough that they formed a semicircle around the hood and stared. Plus, she wasn't moving. Is she dead, Mama? A little girl asked the woman beside her, slamming a pack of Viceroys against her palm. Probably, said the woman. I've been right where she's at, but apparently lacking anything better to do. She, the little girl, and everybody else sheltered in place and just kept looking. Anyway, she made it to here, observed a man scratching off a lottery ticket with his long thumbnail. The usual hopeless glance, he crumpled it and dropped it on the parking lot. But Cain didn't hear any of that, nor was she aware of the gradual dispersal of her spectators. It could have been minutes, it could have been hours, when consciousness began to steal back into her brain and the pressure in her chest eased up. She raised her aching head and looked around, nobody paying her any attention. Then, suddenly remembering, she turned to check out the back seat. No hags, no nothing. She looked back to the parking lot. No wolf. The fear and anxiety slowly dissipated, and she thought, why not? And went inside for a Monopoly scratch-off and a Monster Ultra Red. The scratch-off was a bust, but she killed the monster in 2 long swallows. I needed that, she thought, and her phone rang. Shit. Mayor Krebs. Out of breath. You don't seem to be making much progress on this case, he huffed. I've got Big Tip all over me. The phone grew muffled, and Cain thought she heard "Would you get off me?" am on the phone before the mayor's unmuted voice came back. And we're ready to get somebody's butt in here and wrap this thing up. I don't care who they are as long as nobody believes them. There's an election coming up. Kane instinctively knew not to mention the Obsidian Group. At least not yet. She needed some time to stall until she could follow up on the information her, face it, kill-yourself gorgeous friend Betsy had given her. More specifically, she had a closed-down foster home to find. And with any luck, the director. "Keep me informed of your progress." "And make sure there is some," said the mayor. "It looks pretty open and shut from here." "Keep your eye on somebody whose name is a month, just saying," followed by a muffled ouch. The call ended. "I wish I wasn't parked right in front of this dump," Kane thought, as customers kept streaming in and out of the store, their faces turning into cones, rhombuses, pyramids, and pentagons as they stared. Her phone rang. "Hey, it's Betsy." "How'd you know I was about to call you?" Kane said. "I got your message." "I didn't leave any message." "Well, that's strange. It sounded like you. You were asking for information about Hildebrandt Foster Home and Geneva Hildebrandt. I didn't leave any message, but that's the message I would have left." "Well, do you want to hear what I found out?" "Hit me." They were forced to close 10 years ago when the lawsuits started piling up. They were working those kids to death at their businesses: landscaping, construction, septic tank pumping, porta-john servicing. You get the idea. With pay. Yeah, right. And July was there. For a year and a half. "Tell me about Frau Hildebrandt." "Let's just say nobody came to her funeral." "Don't tell me." "Impaled on one of those levers they used to open septic tank lids. Not long after Elijah took July. You'd have to be pretty damn strong to impale somebody with one of those levers they used to open septic tank lids. You'd have to be pretty damn something."
Yeah, thought Kane. They're going to try to frame that kid to get a conviction. Hell with that.
Could be a mirage or castles in the air, ride and dream on wings and a prayer. Hopeless illusion distort how I feel, bending what I thought was real. Far away from the sea of the setting sun, a maiden rainbow comes to me like a loved one. She will take you hunting for a heart, a fallen angel on me from my past, from the dark. Peasants to king, without trust, stealing with a heart, turn to dust. One of my dreams, beyond desire, ride the moonbeams into the fire. I used to worry about collecting toys or making sense, deciphering noise. She will take you hunting for a heart, a fallen angel on me from my path, yeah, from my dark. I grew up, I let it go. Here I am with nothing to show. I don't own you or shiny doodad. Moment now is all I have. Life can be, such a drain. listening to your monkey brain. She will take you hunting for a heart, fallen angel on me from my past, yeah, from the dark.
Detective Kane stood at the edge of reality in a small town, the air thick with tension. 8 dead people. That number echoed in her mind. Alone, she stood in the center of it all. She had seen her share of dark cases, but this one gnawed at her. Each death was a puzzle piece, but they didn't fit together. It made no sense. She was missing something. Kane also felt the weight of the town's fear. Rumors flew like wildfire. Some said it was a curse. Others thought it was a serial killer. But Kane wasn't convinced. She needed facts. She needed leads. The murders had started with a local teacher, and then the pattern emerged. Each victim held a position of trust or influence. The police had no solid leads, and the mayor was becoming anxious. Kane couldn't shake the feeling that the key to solving this mystery lay in the town's secrets. She spent long hours poring over case files and interviewing residents, but nothing seemed to click. She needed to go deep. The victims were all connected to a boy man named July. He was known to be elusive, almost a ghost on the fringes of town. Rumors swirled around him. Some said he was involved in dark rituals. Others whispered he had an entity following him. Kane needed real answers. She continued her investigation at the local diner, a hub of gossip. The waitress, a nervous woman named Mrs. Otis, served coffee with shaking hands. "Do you know anything about July?" Kane asked. Her eyes widened. "People say he can talk to the dead, that he has an entity." Kane sensed fear in her voice. "Did he ever mention anything about the 8 victims?" Mrs. Otis hesitated and looked around the room. "Not to me." They looked at each other in silence. Then Mrs. Otis picked up a dollar bill left on the table and, turning with her carafe, said, "They're out there right now," and left. As Kane hurried out Slipfinger Road, it felt like something was pulling her. She felt icy fingers squeezing her heart, part anticipation, mostly fear. The closer she got, the stronger the feeling became. The trailer, the cabin, all of it was trembling into geometric shapes, radiating crazily into the jacked-up air as she pulled into the scruffy space in front of the trailer and parked. The air itself seemed to breathe. The sky felt like a slab of iron. Multiple entities clamored all around, and Kane couldn't peel them apart. She got out of the car, reeling, her hand on her holster, and tried to simplify the chaos, comprehend what she was dealing with. "Show yourself," she cried, looking madly around for something to be real. Desperate, threatening voices competed with each other unintelligibly, and she didn't hear but felt the jumbled medley of every hopeless and aggressive emotion possible on and under this earth. Then, as the craziness threatened to rupture, July stepped out of the swirling fog in front of his trailer and stood facing Kane calmly. A flicker of movement caught Kane's eye, and she turned to see the profile of the old man in the front window of the cabin, a younger man standing beside him. They dissolved. At the same time, something was swelling at the end of the trailer, swelling into a ruthless ganglion in the dough-like air, then whipping itself into a funnel that rose above the trailer, leaving behind a caustic laugh, and disappeared. "She's gone," July said simply, and melted back into his trailer. But even then, Kane knew she wasn't alone. She could feel it. Something else. She drew her Glock and swung it around futilely. She seemed to hear running footsteps and looked around wildly for the source just as a vice-like grip on her heart began to squeeze the life out of her. And she heard, "Hello, Cleo," and then a long, dark blank.
to the station to say goodbye. You said you were ready. I told a lie. Father, Son, and Ghost waited silently in line. If they missed this train, there'd be another in time. Some were crying, some just pressed on. I turned away and you were gone. A memory or a dream, doesn't matter, they're the same. All aboard the long dark train. When I think back, I can't recall if you left with good intentions or none at all. The conductor's stare was steely and cold. The passenger list had been foretold. I felt the train coming, it drove me to my knees. I prayed to heaven for hell to free. A memory or a dream, doesn't matter, they're the same. All aboard the long dark train.
Same cheap motel room. Another morning headache. Kane lay for a while trying to put a name on the peculiar odor she remembered from a million places just like this, but came up empty. It was baked in, the kind of smell that could be a last memory. She didn't trust the dreams. Not that she ever had, but these seemed to come straight from the wishful thinking lobe, and she wasn't in the mood to lie there thinking about them. She swung her legs out of the bed and sat there for several blurry minutes, staring at the Walmart artwork nailed to the walls. She couldn't help but think of Jill Carter, the latest in a long line. Nobody wants it solved, she thought. What's it to me? She was sick of governors, mayors, yokel police chiefs, and wallowing in this nest of lies. She was close to the point of writing them all off. No, maybe she was there. Political idiots. Let them strangle in their own poison. The only affection she felt was for that kid, July, and she didn't know why. He was attached to some potent and mystifying trajectories of the universe, and she realized that was probably all she was ever going to know. Maybe he didn't even understand himself. So how was it that in spite of all that dark entanglement, he seemed so innocent? Maybe that was his machination, but she couldn't bring herself to believe it. She splashed her face and headed over to the motel office for some coffee and a bagel. She only wanted the bagel. She needed the coffee. She knew she had one more trip to make down that lonesome road. Even before she knew that, she knew what she would find. 10 minutes later, she was driving. She was thinking of Archer, the kind of good guy you meet sometimes in a bad world. She imagined the sound of a surf somewhere, sitting out in the sun, having a conversation with Archer, or with whatever Archer represented, about the curiosities of this unintelligible world, not its diseases. Some things were riddles in their DNA, not eligible for solving. The best secrets stay secrets. She could already feel the difference as she drove the by now familiar route. A vacancy, a finality. Sure enough, as she pulled up to the cabin and its lonely sister trailer, she felt their abandonment like something immemorial. There was no life there, and hardly the memory of life. No hunger, only satiety. Not even lonesomeness, just vacancy. The old man's truck was gone, the front door of his cabin ajar. The trailer felt like something tucked away in the galactic junkyard. No shadow, no spirit, no threat. Just a finality so resounding there may not ever have been anything else. A little gust caught the carelessly open trailer door, and it creaked and gaped momentarily open. Kane stepped up and looked in. Utterly deserted. Only a wrinkle that slithered along a baseboard and disappeared. She stepped back down and stood in the silent grounds as another little gust nudged the skeletal fingers of the winter trees. From somewhere back in the woods, the forlorn cry of a crow broke the silence. Then nothing. Nothing to see here, folks. Time to move along. As she drove, she called Archer. "What would you say if I told you I was thinking about trying something new?" she said. "On the case?" Archer asked. "No. In life." "You mean?" "Yeah. Get out of police work altogether." "Well, I would consider it proof that you're sane. Also that the world would be losing a good cop. And maybe gaining a good something else?" "Like what?" "I don't know. How about you? You going to keep running for coroner until you die?" "No, I'll stop sometime before that." "Good. A dead coroner isn't much use. I'm proof of that. Want to get some lunch?" It was the second good idea of the day.
Closing, Chapter 2, All the Drowned Folks, by Ken Clark and John Williams.